Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the government and political correspondent, and my guest today is outgoing St. Croix County District Attorney Rick Johnson. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I guess we start right off the bat with the formal name being Eric. I've called you Rick all the time. Is that one of those things where you know the person doesn't know you when you answer the phone and they ask, how are you doing, Eric?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or some people like Eric too.
Right, yeah. But, so you are going to be done here in, well, we're taping this November 10th, so you have, what, is it roughly 2 months?
January 2nd is my last day. The term ends January 2nd.
Okay. So it's not like, what is it, the president, which is later in the month or anything like that?
Right.
Okay. And you are retiring as the currently longest serving district attorney.
Correct. I was first elected in 1984.
Okay.
And so I'm at 32 years elected now. Right. So I'm the longest in the state for DAs and for sheriffs currently.
Okay. 28, the last 28 in Hudson.
In St. Croix County.
St. Croix County. So that's 1988.
Correct.
And so when you started, you were here in this building.
That's right. My office was on the first floor and right off the hallway.
What was it like when you started the office? Because, well, you started as assistant district attorney and then got elected Pierce County DA, and you were the Pierce County DA, I think, when I started as an assistant over in Eau Claire, and that's when I first met you, almost 30 years ago. But so, two terms in Pierce County.
Correct.
Judge Lundell was the DA.
Actually elected to 3.
All right.
I started the third one. Right.
You started the third
They were
one.
2-year terms. We had 2-year terms, yeah.
2-year terms. And anyway, you basically took Judge Lundell's spot.
Correct.
And
right.
And how many assistants were there then in St. Croix?
When I came here, and at that time, it was there was 5 assistant DAs and myself.
Okay.
Right. And we had 1 person in victim witness, and we had 4 secretaries, I believe, and an office manager.
And now what is it?
Now I have 6 assistant DAs, so I only have 1 more. We have a diversion program with 3 people in it, and we have a victim witness has got 4 people in it, and our support staff is 7 right now.
So only 1 more attorney, but the paraprofessionals you've doubled or tripled depending.
Well, that's the only way to do it, because when the state took over, we became state employees in 1990.
Right, I remember January 1. Yeah.
And the stewardship for the state has been lacking, and we're short ADAs now. There's a lot of issues going on, so most people are going to their counties to try to get help. And one way to do it is through support staff, if they can, or paralegals, if they can cover a lot of stuff. It precludes the use of
trying to keep the cost of justice down by using diversion programs, and then people that can follow up. The worthless check, I remember, being a prosecutor in the late 80s. That was a big area where they were trying to get the attorneys hands off if this is a first or, maybe first couple checks that this person's ever had bounced.
Right.
Don't want to use attorney time handling that, and that just kind of grew from there.
We lost, in 2003, we lost a lawyer and a half. Governor Doyle cut some positions statewide, and so at that time we started contracting out our bad checks. So we don't do bad checks anymore. We contract them out, and
so that's been almost 13 years.
Yeah, and business has been real happy. So we don't have, and those are 400 or 500 files a year, and so we don't do those anymore. We also, one of the other big differences, we have a big diversion program, and we'll do some pre-charge diversions so they don't go through the system. So that's helped with numbers, filings, and stuff also.
Okay. Yeah, when I was an assistant in Eau Claire, and we had only 4 assistants, and yet Eau Claire County was more than double the size of St. Croix. We were wondering how you had more assistant DAs over here, but it is just a different set of, there they have the university, and here you have a little bit more rural, but you still have the interstate. So.
Well, we have the interstate, and then we have Apple River at that time, and that's a big thing during the summer. And then also we have part of River Falls too, so we still get part of the university.
But when you look at the population of St. Croix County during your tenure, 28 years, the county's basically doubled in size.
More than doubled.
More than doubled. and the number of judges have doubled.
Correct. Yeah, when I came here, we had 2 judges, 3 public defenders, and 3 probation agents,
Okay.
and
How
5
does that
assistant
compare now?
DAs. Yeah, now we have 4 judges plus a court commissioner. We have 11 public defenders, and my understanding there's 13 probation officers. Now, the public defenders cover an area, but still, it's increased a lot.
Okay. So some of the changes in, obviously, the internet, you didn't have that when you started here. How has that impacted how
Well,
you
that's
do?
huge. I mean, not only the internet, but IT. When we would do search warrants, then we'd come in, and you'd have Deb Staberg was our office manager, and we'd call her, and we'd always be coming in, and that was a few times a month, sometimes weekly, and that would be a long process. You're typing everything out. You're typing up complaints. Everything is on a typewriter. Now, for internet and emails, we can, when an officer, they're trained how to do their own search warrants, they email them to us and we can review them, and then they can either email them or go to the judges and get it signed. So it makes it a lot quicker. And then they use that content for probable cause in the complaint. So they just transfer it. So it makes it a lot more efficient.
Absolutely. I do remember that in the late 80s, the technology was beepers. And if you had call duty during the middle of the night, you wore the beeper and you'd
Yeah.
get a call, and then you'd have to drive to the courthouse, meet the cop, type the thing
Yeah.
up. And
Yeah, it was different. The other big difference I've known is that most of the time, myself, and I still use them, is dictaphones. When we do complaints
Right.
or letters or whatever, we do dictaphones.
yeah.
None of the younger lawyers do that anymore. They all, and the people in my office, the younger lawyers and the people I've hired, our interns, they all type their own stuff. They can do that quicker than either dictating it or whatever, and then they just email it to their secretary.
right. Oh, yeah, that is a major change, because I remember seeing the secretaries with the earphones in, and they'd be
Right.
listening to a tape, and you could be talking to them, and they're listening to it, but you'd have to dictate everything and
Right.
go through the little micro cassettes. And
Right.
So, being in this position, then 28 years you've supervised, do you remember, have you counted how many assistant DAs have you had over?
No, I haven't. I have counted judges and sheriffs. I've worked with 9 sheriffs and 11 judges in St. Croix County.
Just in St. Croix County?
Just judges who are in St. Croix County.
Okay.
But no, I haven't counted assistants. There'd be quite a few.
Although you had a nice period there of stability with a few of those gentlemen, and I say gentlemen
Right.
because they were,
Right.
Dave and
Even Dennis and Frank and
Kevin
and Kevin. I had a strong staff, and at that time they had pay progression, so they were staying longer.
right.
And that continuity and stability was very good.
Let's talk about that pay, because I was one of the ones who was there when the transition from county employee to state employee. We got a nice bump in pay over in Eau Claire County, and then that's when I got out, went into the private sector, and I remember my cohorts that had roughly the same experience. They were keeping pace with whatever raises I got. It seemed like the state was raising them, and then all of a sudden things changed.
Yeah.
and-
Well, I was president when we became state employees. I was president of our DA's Association. There's a lot of interesting things that happened, but Governor Thompson signed that, made us state employees, and gave us pay progression, and it was based on years of service. So the longer you stayed, the more you'd made, and it encouraged people to stay as prosecutors. And so our people stuck around, and it was
As
they
a
were trained.
consequence, you've got very experienced, knowledgeable attorneys
Right.
who were seasoned with life experiences.
Right. Well, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that made things quicker. So when you're dealing with defense attorneys, you can deal with cases easier, and you know where the weaknesses are. The union, there was some change on that. The union then got rid of pay progression, and they ended up going to merit.
Okay.
And then merit got dropped, and now there's still pay progression, but it's not funded. And that started, it's not a partisan, I mean, we're not happy with Governor Thompson or Governor Walker, but I think it started with Governor Doyle. So it's not a partisan issue. It's just that the stewardship for prosecutors around the state hasn't been good. And so they're losing a ton.
Right around the millennia.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
is when that stopped.
Right. So we're losing a lot of people. and a lot of good experienced people. We start them at 49,000, and you can work for 10 years and be low 60s or high 50s.
Wow.
And so people aren't staying. I mean, so it's not good. That's a big issue they have to address.
Well, I mean, and part of the way they're able to get away with it now is because of the flood of attorneys. And there was way more attorneys coming out of law schools than there are jobs. And people are willing to work for those low 40s or whatever, the upper 40s. That's starting to even out now.
But other government jobs, Department of Justice, city attorney's offices, county, corp counsel's office, they're 70s, 80s, sometimes 90s. It's the same level of seniority. I mean,
Okay.
I've lost 2 people in the last few years one to the city attorney in Minneapolis and one to the county clerk, or to the county in the corp counsel's office. And they're making significantly more. So.
I don't know. I don't see the logic in that. With the corp counsel does like zoning enforcement and so forth, and child support collection. They're getting paid more than somebody who's prosecuting child
Sexual assaults,
molestations.
right. And I'm not diminishing. I want to make clear, I'm not diminishing the people that do this. They work hard, and we've got great corp counsels, and I think they're worth every penny. The problem is, of course, is that my lawyers, the prosecutors, are a lot less, and you want to have that seniority, you want to have that stability, and you can't if you're not going to pay people. It's hard you can't raise families, and they have student debt, and that's something that the state will have to address somewhere.
Okay, so during your time here, particularly I'm focusing on St. Croix County because you were just a young buck and you were in Pierce County, but
Right. I had big cases down there. I
Yeah.
had some big prosecutions.
Okay.
The Revelinsky case and the Cush case were big cases when I was there. Big
and
homicide
yeah,
cases.
well, and again, that's been a growing county too. But
Right.
you had just one assistant down there in Pierce
Right.
when you were there.
Right.
I think they've got a couple now.
Right.
But so, what would you say would be your case outcome that brought the greatest satisfaction? You might have a handful of them, but can you share a couple?
Yeah, certainly the O'Connell case, getting the John Doe findings in the O'Connell case was huge. There was a lot of emotion. A lot of us knew Dan. I knew Dan. There was a lot of, I was
And
at
just
the
for our
scene.
viewers, this is the Dan O'Connell murder that
Right.
occurred in 2003.
2003, correct.
Okay.
And then we did the John Doe in 2005, and there was a finding made that Father Erickson had committed that, and there was a lot of time in between there, a lot of investigation, a lot of issues, a lot of calls, a lot of stuff that was going on, and when that happened, when we got the finding from Judge Lindell that Father Erickson had done it beyond probable cause, there was a lot of satisfaction there. And it was quite emotional, actually, and there was just a lot of pressure in that case. But I feel good about that one because I think that helped the community overall. The defendant wasn't around; he was dead. But there was just a lot of community sentiment on that, where there was questions and answers. We opened it up to the public, to the press, so all the testimony and everything we had was opened up. And then I remember Meg Heaton wrote some really good articles about it. And so everybody knew all the facts. There was nothing hidden out there.
Good transparency.
Right.
But a lot of apprehension when the crime was committed. It got national
Right.
national news and
Right.
reporting on it.
Right.
And a little bit of fear because there didn't seem to be a lot of leads at the time
Right.
and so forth. So,
Right.
yeah, credit for enforcement on
Right.
that part.
Yeah.
Any others that popped
Yeah,
up?
there was one, and I was thinking about it. I have my retirement party coming up, and I was going to say some things. And there's a case where an Indian family came up from Iowa, and they were celebrating their 2-year-old's birthday. And the little girl, while they put her in a tube, their father was carrying her in a tube, and as they went down the Apple River, the tube tipped, and the little girl drowned. And I got a referral for a negligent or reckless homicide against the father for taking his daughter in the tube. So we ended up doing a jury inquest. And that means we brought in a jury to make a finding on whether or not this was a homicide. And it was a couple days of testimony, and the father was heartbreaking. He testified that he was at the tube tip. They didn't know there was rapids at the end, the tube tip, and he was underwater looking for his little Nanya. And it was, like I said, it was heartbreaking. And I thought about it all weekend. The jury went out, they came back, and they said it was a homicide, and that they recommended that I should charge. I thought about all weekend. I came back and I declined. I said, I'm not going to charge. I don't think this is a criminal case. We did some checking with the jury afterwards just to see, and we talked to some of the jury members, and they kind of agreed with me, but they thought that's what I wanted they thought that's what I was asking for, was criminal charges. And I just realized the power of the office, because I wanted them to be objective and I wasn't trying to persuade them, I was just trying to present them with evidence. And then I realized how powerful the office is. And like in a grand jury, when prosecutors present to grand juries, they can control a grand jury. And it just showed me the power of the office and what you could do, and how sometimes you have to make independent decisions. And that was hard then. It was harder then because you had 2-year terms.
Right.
And you didn't have time to recover from tough decisions. And this one wasn't a earth-shaking case, but there was some issues there. But so I felt good about that, and I think justice was done. So those are two and there was a couple other child abuse cases that I felt good about, that I thought, one of our assistant DAs said, when he left, he said that, Kevin Gaylor said this, he said that one of the things about these jobs is you make a difference. And right. I think a lot of the people that have worked in my office, and myself included, we've made a difference, and I think that makes you feel good.
All right. I guess I didn't have this one, but why now? Why are you hanging it up now?
It's time. It's time. I've been doing it 34 years. I'm not as resilient as I used to be. In my 20s and 30s and mid-40s, I tried a ton of cases. I've cut back on that now. It's time to do something different. And I think the county could use somebody different too. I think it's, 32 years is a long time, and get somebody new in with some new ideas, and I think the county will benefit, and I'll benefit too. So.
Okay. What would you say is your biggest contribution to St. Croix County's justice system that you'd be most
Well,
proud of?
I think when I was here, we avoided major scandal. I'm proud of that. That's not always true. If you look at other offices over time, there's...
Oh, no, yeah, you'll hear, especially northern Wisconsin has their share of district attorneys running afoul of...
Or sheriffs, or all kinds of stuff, and I think, so I'm proud of that. There hasn't been major scandal. Number two is, I think the way the justice system has evolved, it's turned more to evidence-based and to diversion, and because of CCAP and all the things that where if you get somebody in the system, they're marked for a long time, they're marked for life. Or if you put somebody on as a sexual predator, their life is ruined. Right now, where it's more evidence-based, we're looking at the individual and say, what's the appropriate punishment? And I think that makes a lot of sense, because there's more justice there. But our diversion program, I think, is one of the best in the state. I know it is. And we're doing some things there. And I guess I feel real proud of that. I think that's a thing that we've developed over the last few years that is... we're doing more than just taking referrals and prosecuting cases. Right. We're making decisions. We're putting people...
Changing people's lives.
We're changing lives, but if somebody goofs up, they're not, if we do a pre-charge, they're not going to end up with a criminal record or a referral on their record for the rest of their life. We can do other ways. There are other ways to do this. And I think that's...
well, getting people on the right track.
Right, and then also I'm certified. The people in our diversion program are certified in MRT, which is moral recognition therapy, and it's a way to reduce recidivism, and it's a 16-step process. And if somebody passes that, their chances of being back in the system or committing more crimes is significantly reduced.
Right.
And we have 3 groups that we run every week that my diversion people run. There's 12 people in the group, 10 to 12 people in the group, It goes for 2 hours, and they actually run these groups.
Okay.
And it's for high-risk offenders. And so I think that's something that other counties and other areas aren't doing. So I think if you
Well,
look
how
at
many are doing it, do you know?
how many are doing it, well, there's
Yeah.
12, so we've got over 30 in the
No, I mean, how many other counties do something, a
oh,
program like
none
this?
of none of them that I know that are doing MRT out of the DA's office, out of their diversion office. I don't know anybody that's doing that. Other people have diversion and are doing different things.
So that's a couple examples of something that you're proud of. What's your biggest regret?
I think the biggest regret is not coming up with a final answer in the Newman case. I think there's a big question mark there for a lot of people, including myself, and not coming up with a definitive answer. And then follow that in is that we were never able to charge the person who killed Bill Clapp.
Okay.
Those are the two things that disappoint me. I think Newman, of course, we can disagree on that, but I think in my mind there's still questions out there, and I wish we would answer those questions for everybody involved, and we're able to find evidence to answer that.
Well,
did.
would there maybe, because every case has its own facts, but were there other cases where you did charge, you did try them, and you lost, and you're just fine being able to live with that?
I was able to live with that. Sometimes it was harder. I mean, you can live with that. That's a jury's decision. I mean, there was a couple sexual assault cases that I lost that it was hard to get out of bed for a few days just because it was just tough. But that's the system, you know. This was a little bit different because it was more of there's evidence out there that we can't find, and people disagree about whether there was enough there to charge or not, but there's certainly evidence still out there that we don't know about.
Right.
That's a disappointment. And then, like I said, I'm going to jump in one more.
Sure.
I don't want to. For Clapp, you know, we did a lot of work on that, a lot of investigation. We had a John Doe going, and a lot of those investigators aren't around anymore. But there was a lot of time put into that, and I see every once in a while they'll relook at that again. And I think eventually somebody's going to talk on that. But at the time, it was, you know, to have an unsolved homicide, and a lot of us knew Bill Clapp.
Sure.
And so those are the two that stand out.
You mentioned 11 sheriffs.
Right.
Overall, though, pretty satisfied with the relation between your office and...
Yeah. We always had a good relationship with law enforcement, I think. That was the other thing. I mean, we weren't a rubber stamp, but we worked and communicated, worked at it. And I mean, there were some officers, when you're elected a long time, you're always going to have some enemies. And but I think generally we had good relations. All the sheriffs I worked for, I got along with, and had a good working relationship with them. Some better than others, but none of them were bad. And St. Croix County has had some great sheriffs over the years.
So if you had 5 more years, or 4 more years in the case of that's another term, what change would you implement, or do you think is most needed in this DA's office here in St. Croix County that your successor it'd be worth pursuing?
2 or 3 things I'd do. The first thing, I would really work to focus and strengthen our diversion program. I think that's the future in justice, and evidence-based, and trying to figure out who belongs where, who belongs in prison. You know, I've always said it's 80 to 85% are knuckleheads, and then the other 15% are people that belong in prison or
Right.
jail. And trying to figure that out through compass evaluations or whatever, I would really focus on that. That would be a big thing. The other thing is, I think one of the best ways prosecutors can make a difference in a communication is specialization in your office. And we used to have that. I had
Right.
one drug prosecutor, one traffic prosecutor, one juvenile prosecutor, one domestic abuse prosecutor. And we can't do that now because we have 4 judges that just have general jurisdiction,
Right.
plus the court commissioner that does a lot of things. So I have to man those courts, and all the courts are running all the time. And usually there's 4 of them running at once. So that means we need 4 lawyers there. And those
And
cases,
you may have 3 domestic abuse going on at the
right,
same time.
yeah, in different courts, or which is normal. And so it's harder for me there'd have to be some organization with the judges and with staffing and all kinds of things so we can get back to specialization. I think, for example, on drunk driving, if you had a task force and you had a prosecutor in charge of that task force and did nothing but drunk driving, you can make a significant effect in a county.
Could you do it if there was specialty assignments for judges? I mean,
Yeah.
in some bigger counties, they do that, where judges will take a shift and do nothing but OWIs.
Yeah, or they do civil, or they do juveniles or whatever.
Right.
A lot of the counties do that. And St. Croix County has always done it one way, and we've got excellent judges. I'm not being critical at all, but I wish through scheduling or whatever, if we had some specialization, it would. I think we could be more effective.
Right. I wasn't going to bring it up, but now that you mention it, it would just because you very supportive of the judges, and
Right.
The race for your seat got quite contentious, and I want to know what's your insight on that? How did that affect you? Because there were shots taken at you. Mike was obviously somebody that you supported, running on the same party ticket, and Mike's a former DA himself. I'm sure you knew him when he was down in Racine County.
Right.
So his opponent didn't seem to play any favorites when it came to criticism. It was aimed at you, aimed at the judges, and so forth.
Right.
What did you think about that?
Well, first of all, when I found out there was 4 people running, I was honored because, for all those years, people said, "Why is nobody running?" And my theory was always,
Yeah, how many times did you have an opponent?
nobody. The first time I ran against an incumbent. But during that
In Pierce County.
right in Pierce County.
But in St. Croix County,
No.
even your first time after you got
Right,
appointed, you
right,
didn't have anybody
right,
running against
right.
you.
But I don't think that was just fortuitous. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing things. I would still campaign, even though I didn't have anybody running against me. I'd go door to door, get my signatures.
I remember when I lived in North Hudson with you, I'd see you
Yeah,
going
knocking
around,
on
yeah.
doors and stuff. So I never took it for granted. So I think it would have been difficult. I never took it for granted. So when the 4 people ran, I felt, wow, I guess people do want the job. So the first thing was I felt good. Mike had been with the office for a while. He's an excellent prosecutor. He with us for 3-4 years. I brought him up here because we needed some experience, and so it was natural for me to support him. And I was very comfortable with that. And after we won the primary, it was fine. I think it was difficult because in the campaign, I like hard campaigning is fine. For example, I think one of the things that his opponent did is list cases through CCAP and then put dispositions in and then kind of take shots at those dispositions. And I think that's fair. That's fair politics. When you list, you go through CCAP and say he handled this and this is the result. It may not be accurate, but it's somewhat fair. But when you make wild accusations or things that aren't true, which I thought were, in calling Mike corrupt, I thought that crossed the line. And I think Sarah was maybe newer in politics or newer in the community or whatever, but it was strong. Mm-hmm. And when you're going after somebody's character and reputation, I thought that was strong. And and the fact that she was going after me, which is fine. I mean, she's trying to get somebody in my office, and she's trying to show that she can do a better job. I didn't take it personal, but I did look when I looked at him and the shots that were taken at him. I felt bad for him.
Well, I'd like to get I have a take on it, but I don't, I'm just the host here. You're the guest. And
yeah.
How do you feel about, the fact that you used to have to run every 2 years,
Yeah.
and running on a partisan platform with November elections.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I like being on the November. Partisan makes it easy in St. Croix County because it's a strong Republican county. Mm-hmm. And if you join the party and you're active, it helps.
Sure.
And with the 2-year terms, it really helped.
But aside from St. Croix County, just overall as a policy.
Well, overall, that doesn't make sense. We don't make decisions based on partisan. They should be non-political. I like, though, that they're elected. I know some people think they should be county board appointed. I like the fact that they're elected.
But if you move them to April, make them nonpartisan, make the register of deeds and the clerk of court, all that nonpartisan.
Right.
I mean, does party politics have any place in those kind of offices?
The only place it has is it gives you automatic votes.
Right.
right.
But instead,
So-
and so yeah, people assume certain things, but there is nothing that I know of that says in either party's platform we're going to be easy on a
Right.
particular crime, or we're going to be filing
Right.
deeds differently and registering them differently.
And if I had true courage, I would have ran as an independent. I think that's what I know. Some DAs that did that over the years, they ran as an independent, and that's probably the way to go because you're not.
But you take away the partisan recognition, then people have to run on their record and what they've resume, and it's more like a job application then.
But if you do run as an independent, though, then and somebody runs against you, they're going to get those automatic. In St. Croix County, it's 6,000 or 7,000 votes that people just
Then it would be-
check the box. So you're in the hole right away.
Right, and I just think it's scary when you introduce that because people make those assumptions.
Yeah.
Even when you are running for a political office, just
Yeah.
because you're running on one party or another doesn't necessarily mean that's your view on that issue.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree. I think it'd be nice if they're nonpartisan, but since they are in St. Croix County, it's when the 2-year terms, it was you had to be on your toes.
well, that took a constitutional change,
right,
and very welcome, I assume.
right. You
You don't think you need to go to 6-year terms?
no 4. Tennessee has 6-year terms for the Ds.
Okay.
But no, I think 4-year terms is fine, and I like being elected. I think you should be accountable to the people, and you should be willing to go out and meet and talk to people. I've enjoyed that part of the job. 2 years, if you made a mistake, it would be hard to recover from, and
All right, so getting into a little bit of the money, because you don't want to see, there is constraints. It's not like you have an unlimited, people have this
Right.
perception that the government has unlimited resources and so forth. But if you did have an unlimited budget, what would you most likely implement if the funds were there to pay for it?
I would look at more options on our diversion program. I would look at that. And the other thing is I'd pay our assistant DAs so they'd stay.
Okay.
I mean, I've got a great staff right now, but I don't know. I just lost a good lawyer 3 months ago. He took a $30,000 raise to go to the Minneapolis City Attorney's office. I've got great lawyers now that are young, but they're not
$30,000
Yeah,
raise.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I lost a good lawyer that went to the Department of Justice or the Attorney General's office and got a $20,000 raise. So I want to keep the lawyers I have. So that's one thing I would do if that's an option, just to make
Okay.
sure that they would stay. The other thing is, like I said, our diversion program is where I think a lot of resources can go because they can cut down on your caseload. It's where the future is.
Well, and it cuts down on actually the need for judges, right?
Right.
But while we're on the subject, judges, what about judges' pay?
Judges pay?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know anything. You think that? I don't know. I don't have an opinion on whether it's too low or too high.
Yeah.
Why?
I was just wondering if that's, I mean, obviously people choose that not
Right.
necessarily for the money. For some
Right.
people are getting a pay cut, depends on their county.
Yeah,
But
right.
we pay the judges throughout the state the same regardless
Right.
of the area. So
Right.
judges, even if they're in Milwaukee, they get paid as
Yeah.
a less populous county
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
I was just curious if that has had, judges seem to get in there and sometimes they stay. And so a 20-year judge makes the same as a first-year
Yeah.
judge. Kind of antithetical to your example with the DAs.
Yeah.
You wouldn't pay an assistant DA the same for 20 years and
Right,
expect him to
right.
stay.
My salary is based on the population of the county.
Not at longevity.
No, not longevity is nothing. So if somebody would beat me, they're going to get, and they're right out of law school, they get paid. It's based solely on the population of the county.
Which is?
Well, it used to be 0 to 15, 15 to 35, 35 to 50. Now I think they've broken it down. In order for me to get a raise, it'd have to be over 100,000, I think.
Yeah, because we're at 86,000
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that for St. Croix.
But when I first came here, it was 35,000. I remember I was at 34. So I was encouraging people to move to Hudson.
Right. There you go. So, what change do you think is most needed for Madison to improve the delivery of justice? Whether it's St. Croix County or across the state, but what do you think is most
I think
needed?
I'm on a recidivism committee, and I think we need to step aside on the politics and the tough on crime stuff and look at true answers to some of these things. And part of it is evidence-based. Part of it is earned release. I think we need earned release. We have truth in sentencing now, and the idea is that you'd send somebody to prison, and they used to be they'd get out earlier.
Right.
They'd serve a portion. Truth in sentencing said you gave them 20 years, they're going to serve 20 years. And they thought by doing that, judges would reduce their sentences, knowing that they're going to serve the whole time. Well, they don't.
Right.
And so now they're just sitting during that time.
No judge wants to be accused of being soft on.
Right.
You only sent them to 5 years.
Yeah.
Last year you were sending them to 10. But
And that was really evident in some of our white-collar cases. Some of our white-collar cases, they got big sentences, but they only served a portion of it.
okay.
And so now that's why we have so many people in prison that we're paying for. I mean, I think my understanding is we're paying more for prison in Wisconsin than we are secondary education.
Okay.
And our population is more than twice as many as Minnesota.
Well, and we also have other things in Wisconsin. Our rate of incarceration, just compared to Minnesota, is
Right.
And Minnesota's a very comparable state,
Right.
population-wise,
Right.
demographically,
Right.
and yet we're way higher on
Right.
the number of people going.
And I
to
think
jail.
that's truth in sentencing. I think that's the big reason.
right.
But there are other.
They have guidelines over there too.
Yeah.
I remember those sentencing guidelines went in the early '80s because I did a paper for my undergrad criminal
Okay.
justice major on Minnesota's brand new
Okay.
sentencing guidelines. They've been in place. They've gone through a few changes over the years, but judges now have pretty narrow limits on what they can sentence, and they still do the grids and so forth.
Sure.
But
Sure.
more unfettered, discretion here in Wisconsin for things.
Yeah.
Which would you prefer?
Unfettered discretion. Good judges you don't need guidelines, sentencing guidelines.
Yeah.
Judges that are experienced and know what they're doing can give the appropriate sentences. I don't think we've had sentencing guidelines in the past, advisory, not mandatory on certain things. And it was.
Don't you think it would cut down, though, on substitutions of judges if, instead of that perception, go to this judge because they're more lenient when it comes to this type of crime. If you have guidelines, it doesn't matter which judge you're in front of, it's going to fall within that.
I think you're still going to substitute judges that you think are going to pound your client. I don't think we've had them, and I think you can still get around them. I thought that it was just more paperwork, and it didn't really affect the sentences. And if somebody wanted and deserved it, but I think earned release is something.
So you'd say the one piece of legislation could be passed on Madison, something that would give you a little more power with the diversion programs and get away from this truth in sentencing.
Right.
Mandatory hitting people.
Right. Also, expungement, I think, is important. I think
Okay.
you have to have some expungement for people that after they serve their time and they get out, there should be something there where the record is expunged if they've, a certain amount of time and it's approved by the judge and the victim and things. Because trying to get jobs now with that criminal record is difficult.
Okay.
And we've found that if people have jobs, they stay out of prison.
Sure.
And so,
Well, it's always that conundrum because with the criminal record, harder to get a job and then go back to the life of crime and so forth.
Right.
All right. Well, what happens when January 3rd comes then and you're no longer the St. Croix County DA?
I'm going to take a year off. The plan is to take a year off. I'm going to get in shape. I'm in terrible shape. Physical, mental, get in better shape all around. I'm going to do a lot of reading. I'm going to do a lot of working out. I'm going to go to Mexico for the winter.
Okay.
And do some traveling. But I'm going to take a year not doing much. And then after that, I'll get in. I also teach at Mitchell. I'm an adjunct there.
Okay.
I'll continue to do that. And there's some other things that I've got going on. I'm on some foundations and committees.
Would you be interested in serving on some of those commissions that review the truth in sentencing or other judicial or prosecutorial oversights that come out of Madison?
I would, but I want to make sure that I've been on tons of committees in Madison and and St. Croix County over the years, and there's good ones and bad ones.
Right.
And if it was this recidivism one is a good one, and if it was truly committed in answers and solutions, then I'm interested in. If it's more of a meeting just to meet, then it wears thin pretty quick.
Sure.
And but yeah, I think I have something to offer. My prosecution style has changed over the years. You know, when I was younger, I was more black and white, and now I think I'm a little more gray.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Literally and figuratively, huh?
and I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
I think that's a good thing.
Oh, great. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show.
Sure. Thank
Good
you.
luck with your the retirement, and hope I'm sure you'll experience nice weather in Mexico in January.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
We'll be seeing you still though in the community
Yeah.
once you get back, right?
I'll be around.
All
Sure.
right. Excellent.
Good.
Thank you, and thank you, viewers, for watching us in another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, and keep watching.